Gabby, welcome to the October 15th, 2014 City Council regular meeting. If you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing for a moment of silence for our men and women overseas. Great, thank you. Get everyone up to speed. We're actually a continuation of our meeting from earlier. We started with an exec session earlier this evening. And before we get into communications and everything official, I would like to officially welcome our new city manager, Rick Robinson, to Canby and heading up the city. So welcome, sir.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So we will move into communications. Is there any communications at this point? No? All right. First opportunity this evening for citizen input. The 2-3 citizens that are here, not rushing to the stage to talk to us. Fantastic. Moving into mayor's business, a couple of things. First off, just an update from C4, Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. Continued conversation on the Area Commission on Transportation, what that would look like once it's put into place on the county level, how we'll play into that, and what will that look like from a decision standpoint in terms of how money flows through and what projects will get done. We also had some extensive conversation on what's the purpose of C4 and what value add do we have to the Board of County Commissioners. We had a dust up, we'll say, a couple months back where the coordinating committee worked on a pretty extensive transportation piece for almost 2 years, just to have the Board of County Commissioners say that thanks but no thanks, we're not interested in what you have. And so that ruffled a great number of feathers on the committee, and so we want to know from the county commissioners, do we add value, and if so, what kind of value? Much like we have various committees and things that give us recommendations, what weight does that coordinating committee carry with them? So we're working on those pieces and the objectives for this year, for the next year, so for 2015 moving forward, what kinds of things do we want to tackle and bring to the Board of County Commissioners. It was Councilor Hensley was there as well, so it was good dialogue. I think it was more about what's their agenda, what are they working on, that we're the ones that are closest to what's going on in our cities, and what can we bring to them that can help them out. So I also had an opportunity to have lunch with County Chair John Ludlow, and there was pretty good discussion on a study done by Metro and their growth. And a lot of their study came back to say that they're pretty good on their UGB. They're not looking to expand their UGB. They're going to focus mostly on infill and density growth. And so kind of looking at what the county is looking at doing is where is the county at, where is each city at in terms of their urban growth boundaries. Do we have enough? Not enough? Where are we going to be in 20 years? Are we going to be maxing that out? Because obviously very different in Clackamas County than what Metro is, what makes up the Metro boundary. Part of the big piece that they're looking to do is when session is in January, they're going to go and Chair Ludlow has said almost legislative asks to the legislature on land use, land development, transportation pieces, very similar to kind of the grand bargain that was worked out in Washington County. A lot of conversation around the rural reserve, urban reserve, undesignated piece, and what does that look like. That was a pretty big conversation piece for us. Actually, when I first got on the council, it sounds like it's being tested in courts as well as at the state level. So one of the things, and we'll put this in Rick's lap as first order of business, or one of the many that I'm sure we're going to be throwing at him here. And then Kim, I don't know what our agendas are looking like over the next couple of weeks here as we finish out the year. But one of the things that Chairman Ludlow wanted to know, or was conversation that I think would be good for us to have, would be to discuss some of the urban growth boundary pieces that we have, maybe revisit the rural and urban reserve conversation, and get many of us maybe informed about it and up to speed on it so that we can be a part of that, those legislative asks that they're going after, and what does that look like and its impact on Canby as we look towards our growth. We've got annexation specifically as an addition to our city limits here on the south end of town here in November, but what more are we going? I know Matilda has kept meticulous detail on a great many things, and that being one of them. But it'd be worth having a presentation during a council meeting, I think, on that piece. So I don't know. Tim will let me know on those agenda, if there's room in the agenda coming up.
How soon would you like to see that? Is this something that you want us to prepare to some detail so that what we're providing to you is a current, a complete profile of where we are currently, what the projected growth boundaries are based on what we know today, and then provide maybe an opportunity subsequently for a study session to begin looking at options and interests on the part of the individual council members to explore opportunities that may exist for expansion of the boundaries, or as an alternative, focusing more detail and more emphasis on infill and increasing densities.
Yes. No, thank you, Rick, for jumping in and hitting the ground running. What I'm thinking, one, we need a history lesson, kind of what has gone on. I think we're looking at two different things here, the rural and urban reserve and undesignated conversation. That being one piece of conversation for us, because there was, going back, I think, under Mayor Thompson, that was one of the few times I actually saw her get mad at her council when the council, we went against her recommendation, because she was very involved in that, and so it definitely created some different designations than what we gave up a lot. We gave up in one area to get something else, and so I think a history lesson on what that was would be good, number one. Number two, looking at our growth boundary, do we need to address that in terms of, are we going to need to expand that in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Is what's available within our city boundary and our urban growth boundary enough for the potential growth that Canby may see in that time frame? Walking and talking with Council President Dale and walking the back part of the Tofty Farms and looking at the farmland that's there that's slated for development. Well, that runs all the way to the river, and we'll kind of stop. Is there beyond that? You jump the river, it becomes a whole different conversation. A lot of our growth is going to be south and to the east, so what is that? I don't know if I'm being too broad in what.
No, and perhaps we could dovetail into that a discussion of our ability to serve, looking at sewer capacities and water system capacities as integral in looking at our long-term plan for urban growth.
Yes, I think that is a crucial piece as well. I know Canby Utility is constantly looking ahead down the road and how much capacity we have and what does that entail. I know that puts into conversation a great many things in terms of transportation, utilities, water, etc. So that may be a bigger piece. In terms of a time frame, I'd like to have at least hopefully some dialogue before the end of the year, before they get into the legislative session, so that we can be a part of what Clackamas County is going after in terms of what they're working on and what they're looking to ask for, and be a part of that plan.
That makes sense. And the point that you brought up, a study of transportation corridor, transportation patterns, and the effect of urbanization on our current transportation system, options and alternatives that could be made available based on resources that we have or potentially have access to, legislative solutions and others that we might be able to draw from.
Mr. Mayor.
Perfect, thank you, sir. Yes.
Let's also just take a look and see what the scope is of what the county is looking at. It's possible that their review may be limited to the areas controlled by Metro. We sometimes fall into a different category being outside of the Metro boundaries. So if that is the case, if the legislative ask is really going to be irrelevant to Canby's situation, then we are looking at a bigger time frame. And and frankly, the mayor is the only person that's had this discussion, that in the gap between when you were on the council and I came on the council, I don't remember this ever having happened. So no one has had a formal study session on this except the mayor. The other thing to wrap into this, I would suggest, is taking a look at where we are on our state-required 10-year comprehensive plan review. That this has a lot of overlap with our urban growth boundary. And assuming some of us are going to be sticking around for the next 4 years, my prediction is that we're going to be seeing unprecedented growth and pressure, and suddenly all of those quaint population projections and land projections are going to be out of date. And transportation is a very key part of this, that we need to make sure that our commercial transportation corridors can keep up with people, that when we fill up that industrial park, that we have ways of getting in and out. So I would suggest, unless this is something that needs to be done before the legislative session, I think it's a good discussion, Mr. Mayor, but let's not limit the horizon of it, because it is a big elephant for us to take up, but it is a huge policy thing, and it's going to be the thing that council in the next 4 years is going to be dealing with, is how to handle development and growth and plan for it. Because right now, I had a discussion with Matilda about that, about available lands, and using current projections, everything's fine.
Maybe using the analogy of eating an elephant one bite at a time, we can look at presenting to you before the end of the calendar year the history and background and kind of the nuts and bolts of where we are today, which gives us kind of the open door to look at next steps, and we can systematically look at the infrastructure issues associated with growth in the various directions. Growth could be possible within the city, expansion of the urban boundaries, and maybe be pretty systematic as we move through this, so that at the end of a perhaps 6-month period, some designated period, you'd have a really good feel for not only where we've been, but where we are and where you would like to see us go next. And about the only way to do that is to be pretty systematic about it, and we can step through the process, and as we identify, because each step you take, you'll identify a new issue to address, and we want to make sure as staff that we're responsive to your needs for information, so that you can make an informed decision when this issue comes up as a policy matter.
Perfect.
Thanks for the update, Mayor, on that. That's helpful.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Because we are out of Metro, a lot of that doesn't filter. I don't even see it or even know some of those reports that get created or discussed, and so it was an interesting. So when he asked me about it, and I was like, kind of put it on my heels a little bit, going. He's sending me the information so that I can read it and just kind of. But it was an interesting piece where, because Clackamas County has to serve 2 masters. They have a portion of them that are in Metro and a big portion that are not. And so how do you plan in one area for certain vision and direction from one governing body and still manage to keep in mind you have a whole other county that's going to go and different growth pieces. We talked transportation as well, and the I-5 connection, and the employment lands outside of Metro, there's a tremendous amount in two areas. Rural Clackamas County and Washington County. Well, Washington County seems to be the one getting most of the transportation dollars. How do we start to get some of that as well to make our employment lands much more of a viable option? So it was a number of conversations being had there, so.
Their commissioners are trickier than we are at getting.
Commissioners can be a little bit trickier, yes. All right, thank you, I appreciate that, and City Manager, thank you. Councilor comments and liaison reports. Mr. Rocha.
Mine don't start until the end of this month, so I don't have anything today.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, you already covered C4, so I won't need to go in further detail. Other than attending that meeting, I did attend the healthcare forum that was held by one of our local doctors here down on First Avenue. She hosted Senator Olson and Representative Kennemer, and they discussed the Affordable Care Act and some issues surrounding that. I also attended Senator Olson's town hall last week, so he was a busy man, and I was trying to keep up with them. Tomorrow is the school board meeting. However, I'm going to have to watch it on TV and report that way because I also have a Riverside Neighborhood Association is doing the traffic meeting for Birch Street, so I'll be attending the neighborhood meeting as their liaison and having to report on both of those next time.
Will you, for the benefit of those viewing at home, give the place and time of said meeting?
Yes, it is at, I have to look at mine. 7 o'clock, about 6:30.
At the Methodist
It's at the
Church.
United Methodist Church, corner of Territorial and Holly. It's 7 o'clock tomorrow evening.
Perfect. Thank you.
I thought it was 6:30, I was going to be early.
Councilor Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Rocha and myself attended the October Chamber Luncheon. We got to hear from two very enthusiastic Canby High School students who participated in Manufacturing Day. And it was, I believe there was over 100 students that participated in that. And thank you, Renata, for all your efforts on that. It was very encouraging to hear the enthusiasm from these youngsters because they got to see firsthand some of the companies we have right here in Canby in their manufacturing efforts. We also got to hear from the new chamber director who is full of enthusiasm and energy and I think will be great for our community. I attended the October traffic safety meeting and a lot of people have asked us, when is 10th Street going to open up in the new development? And wanted to report to everyone that Jerry Nelzine from Public Works has said that there's a big checklist that they have to work through. And one of the key things is the sight lines, to making sure that all the intersections are safe and trimmed up properly. And then there's some work that's being done with the park, the new park that's going in there. And I'd just like to say what a tremendous asset Jerry Nelzine is for the city and for our traffic safety. He's a fixture at all of our meetings. He was instrumental, in fact, in getting the sidewalks that are going to be going in across from the high school on the fast track. And so just appreciate his participation, appreciate the police chief and the police officer, Jeremy, who's also a fixture at our meetings and has really been working hard to encourage folks to follow the speed limit around town. Also, as Tracy mentioned, there's a special meeting tomorrow evening at the Canby Methodist Church at 7 o'clock. And one of the new signs is a digital readout sign that tells you how fast you're going. And currently that is on Birch Street, so that'll be one of the items of discussion. And let's see, last evening I attended the library board meeting, and our new city manager, Rick Robinson, was there. Thank you for that. You've been everywhere. And our library is very anxious to start the planning for the new library civic building. And the newest board member, John Smith, has been working very hard on updating the Canby Library Handbook. And so that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, on the Canby utility front, They have just adjusted their master fee schedule for hookups and reconnects just to stay current with actual cost that they bear to do those things. Want to emphasize there's no change in power or water rates. This was just hookups and reconnects. They're continuing with their general manager recruitment and replacement process. They are doing just as we did some months ago in putting together their company profile and their job description and selecting a recruitment firm. And finally, their latest quarterly reliability report on the power side came in, and happy to report that the news is boring as usual. Canby Utility continues to supply power at a reliability far higher than that of the industry. And so congratulations to Bob and all the fine men and women at Canby Utility.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to report this week.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Councilor Ryder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I attended the Planning Commission meeting this past Monday and was pleased to see our new city manager there. And
Making rounds.
he was doing that, yeah, he's getting, other than that, it was his first day on the job, and I mean, he was running, hitting the ground. And the Planning Commission had their final vote on allowing the construction of the Verizon cell tower over near Johnson Control. I think it's right across from them. They also voted to approve the request for construction of a home on 9th and Ivy. It's the east side of Ivy. And then also they approved a conditional use building on Birch and 113th and Birch. And so they also reported that the construction of the Fred Meyer gas station is under appeal and hopefully will go before the State Board of Appeals in November and be resolved by the first of the year, hopefully.
What a process
Long
that's
process,
been.
yes. That's all I have.
The Verizon, you said they had their final vote. Did they approve that
Yes,
tower?
yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Never a dull moment with Fred Meyer Gas.
I know.
Yeah, the current date that I'm aware of is October 28th for the oral arguments.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we have, next on the agenda is a public hearing. I'm totally, thank you. Council President, keeping me on track. The consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes of the October 1st, 2014 City Council work session and regular meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Henry to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the October 1st, 2014 City Council work session and regular meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 6-0. Now, we'll go into the public hearing piece. So tonight we have a public hearing regarding Canby Area Transit's 2014 Civil Rights Program Title VI Limited English Proficiency Plan. So I get to read this handy-dandy little format for everyone. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow comment card and give it to the city recorder there at the end. At the appropriate time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and interest in the matter. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time. Seeing none. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. The staff report. Questions, if any, by the hearing body or staff. We'll open the public hearing for testimony. We'll give proponents no more than 2 minutes, opponents 2 minutes. We'll close the public testimony. Questions, if any, more by the hearing body, discussion by the hearing body, and then a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the public hearing?
Will the public hearing be as long as that reading?
Probably not.
Probably not. With that being all talked about and put out, we will have Julie present the staff report.
Good
Hey,
evening.
Julie, how are you?
Good evening, Julie. Welcome back.
As you know, because of federal funding we received, we're required to comply with a lot of federal regulations. And this policy ensures that the city and CAT comply with the civil rights regulation known as Title VI, and that we have an approved written policy that includes a limited English proficiency plan. The purpose of Title VI regulation is to ensure that no one is discriminated against because of their race, color, or national origin. Our first Title VI plan was adopted in 2008, and federal regulations recently changed, and all transit properties have been required to update their Title VI plans. The regulation requires providers to complete a four-factor analysis to determine which languages are spoken in their service area and develop a strategy for communicating with individuals who have limited English proficiency. It probably won't surprise you that the analysis showed a high percentage of Canby residents speak Spanish. According to the 2010 census, the CAT service area is 20.3% Latino or Hispanic, and in the city of Canby, the population is 21.3%. According to the Canby School District report card in 2013, an average of 24.5% of enrolled students in K through 12 were classified as English learners, with as many as 10 different languages spoken. Providing information to our Spanish-speaking customers has been a focus of CAT for several years now, so we are already doing what the regulations require. Our schedules, rider notices, website postings are all produced in both English and Spanish. We have a Spanish option for people who call our phone system. Our dispatchers have the ability to get a translator on the line in just a few moments. But there's always room for improvement, so updating this plan has been a good exercise for us. We refined our stakeholder list and developed a more comprehensive list of external contacts. It includes nonprofits like the Canby Center and Bridging Cultures, churches, the Adult Center, apartment complexes, the media, Canby Schools, the school district, state and county government, and translation services. In September, we publicized a meeting regarding the Title VI plan update. In order to reach Spanish speakers in their community, we attended 2 Bridging Cultures events in September, where we met a lot of people and distributed flyers and for the meeting, which was held on September 23rd. We also attended the Kiss Summer Goodbye event in Waite Park and distributed flyers at the Canby Center, the Adult Center, the library, apartment complexes, and the Transit Center, and of course on the buses. We also notified schools and churches. The September 23rd meeting was well attended. I would say approximately half of the attendees spoke Spanish. The documents were presented in both English and Spanish. Citizens asked questions and commented in both English and Spanish. The attendees were encouraged to comment or add to the contact list that is presented in the plan. Although I think it's important that we meet our federal requirements, I think it's more important that we're doing everything we can to communicate to all the citizens of Canby, so everyone knows about CAT and is able to use our service. The update of this Title VI plan is very well timed. Our new limited English proficiency plan will be very valuable to us as we design an outreach strategy for a transit master plan next year. We received an ODOT grant to fund that planning process, and we're doing some surveys right now to inform the planning process. So I'm going to take this opportunity to encourage people to visit our website and complete the CAT survey. It's available in both English and Spanish at canberratransit.org.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Is there any questions for Julie? on
Yes,
this?
I am.
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, where do you acquire the printed material for the non-English speaking people?
Well, we have, we work with a firm that translates it for us. So I send it to them in English, and within a couple of days, they send it back to me in Spanish.
Okay, now is this published material, is this paid for by CAT?
Yes, it comes out of the CAT budget, actually out of our marketing line. That's where we take it out of, it's the marketing line.
Okay, thank you.
How often do you have to do this, Julie?
It's not that often. Once we do something one time, we don't change our publications very often, so. And it's fairly inexpensive, you know. A big document can be as much as $500. That's why we aren't going to translate the plan into Spanish unless someone asks for it, because, you know, who wants to read those kind of plans?
So the state or federal government does not provide any costs?
No, no. There is a part of the planning where you evaluate how much it costs you, and if it is a huge amount of money, say if we had multiple languages or something, there are accommodations made, but the amount of money that we spent is fairly minimal, so we didn't qualify for any of that.
And it's, the reason we have to do this is because of the federal monies that you get, correct? So it's not, I think what possibly Councilor Ryder was driving at was another unfunded mandate, but I think that it's because of the funding, right?
Right.
That this is kind of one of those strings attached.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Any other comments or questions? No? Thank you,
very
Julie.
much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we will open up the public hearing. We are open. Are there any proponents at this time? Nobody stood up. Any opponents? Okay. We're going to close the public hearing. And so done. Any other questions for the hearing body at this point in time? Discussion? No? Great.
Is there any formal adoption we have to do, Kim? or-
Yes,
Yeah,
it's coming up.
I missed it. Oh, the next agenda item, gotcha.
All right, that concludes our public hearing on the Canberra Transit's 2014 Civil Rights Program Title VI Limited English Proficiency Plan. Thank you, Julie, for that. Appreciate it. Moving into resolutions and ordinances.
Okay, the first item we have is Resolution 1200. This is adopting Canberra Transit's 2014 Civil Rights Program Title VI Limited English Proficiency Plan.
Great, we just heard that, and gladly take a motion.
I move to adopt Resolution 1200, a resolution adopting Canby Area Transit's 2014 Civil Rights Program, Title VI, Limited English Proficiency Plan.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilor Ryder and seconded by Councilor Rocha to approve Resolution 1200, adopting Canby Area Transit's 2014 Civil Rights Program Title VI Limited English Proficiency Plan. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Carries 6-0. Thank you.
The next item we have, this is before you for second reading, is Ordinance 1404. This is authorizing a lease agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the rental of property for Canby Area Transit parking and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Kim. So just as a recap for us and those of you at home, we are looking to lease some property behind where our current Canby Area Transit office is. Our that we will currently going through some, or will be going through some paving and fencing to be able to park all of our Canby area transit vehicles in one location that's secured, and eventually, I think we've worked into the lease a potential purchase piece for this property as well. Since we have Julie here, are there any questions or follow-up pieces that anybody's needing clarification on?
Well, last meeting.
Okay. And this is for a roll call vote.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 1404, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a lease agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the rental of property for Canby area transit parking and declaring an emergency.
Great, thank you.
Second?
Thank you, councilors. Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Ryder to approve ordinance 1404, authorizing a lease agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the rental of property for Canby area transit parking and declaring an emergency. Roll call vote.
Counselor Rocha?
Aye.
Counselor Hensley?
Aye.
Counselor Coleman?
Aye.
Counselor Dale?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Ryder?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is some new business. First up is recommendation for marketing downtown city-owned buildings. With that, we have Ms. Renata. Hi, Renata.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. With me today, I have John Southgate, a development consultant that's been helping me with this project. At your September 3rd meeting, you had given staff direction to move forward on trying to market 4 city-owned buildings in the downtown core. We've been busy since then over the past month. We've gotten appraisals on all 4 buildings. We've engaged John Services. We have reached out to a number of developers and continue to meet with them over the next couple weeks. And we've developed a firmer recommendation on the best way to proceed. So I'd like to invite John now to tell you a little bit about what he's hearing out there from the development community, as well as what his considered opinion would be about how we can get the best possible proposals back to the council.
Thank you, Renata. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you and with Renata, who's you're lucky to have her, but I think you probably already know that. We have been meeting with developers, about 10 or so. We still have a few more that we're working through, both from the more immediate area as well as from within the region. We're getting some, as I said earlier, cautiously optimistic signals. I think there's interest in the buildings, some more than others. I think the possibility of new mixed-use development, multi-story, that's going to be probably more difficult because there aren't any comps, any comparable pricing for either rents or for ownership. But we have some people who are kicking tires. At this stage, and it's a little bit early to say this, I can't promise this, but I think we're going to get some developer response. I think the police block is probably the most intriguing building because it has some great bones, it has some vintage features that are attractive to whether it's a brew pub or some use along those lines. If I may, I'll just transition then into the approach. We've briefed you before about this, but the request for expressions of interest, it's kind of an unwieldy acronym, RFEI, but the idea is to be as flexible as possible. Since we don't know what the market necessarily is, we don't want to presume on developers to say, here's exactly what we want, how many units or whatever. Instead, you tell us developers, what do you see for this or that building? What might you look from the city to help make that realistic? And what's the return on investment for the city if you're proposing some sort of a city participation? We also, a very important element of this process is the credential of the developer. Since we're not asking for a specific proposal, it's more almost, maybe the most important thing is for the developer to demonstrate who he or she is. Here's my track record. I've developed this project in Oregon City. I've developed this project in Portland. I have a good track record. I deliver. I'm in good financial status right now, so I would be a good partner for you, city. That's the sort of thing you're looking for, almost as much as what the idea is. Lastly, I guess I'll just cover what is the basis for any ultimate decision if you do go this route. first of all, as a reminder, the city council makes the decision. So you'll get to decide if this proposal, more than that one, is one that you feel is most consonant with what you want to see happen in downtown. That said, I want to read these so I don't forget any important point. We're still in draft stage on this request for expressions of interest, but I think the main bases for the decision that we're proposing will be, again, first of all, what are the qualifications or experience of the developer team? What is the capacity of what they're proposing to really help revitalize downtown? How will this help move the dial for downtown revitalization? New businesses, new shops that attract more customers, new housing, who are going to spend a lot of discretionary income on businesses. Tell us your story. Why is your idea best for what we're trying to achieve in downtown? The third point is this a fair deal for the city? If a proposal entails simply paying appraised value, that's not going to take a lot of figuring out as to whether or not that makes sense. If they're asking for some special terms on the sale of the property, maybe they want to buy it for appraised value but over time, or maybe they want a discount in exchange for doing something above and beyond in terms of the quality of what they're proposing to put in there. Again, I'm hoping that we'll have, I hope we have a problem of too many responses so that you're going to have to make some decisions like, okay, this guy, great credentials, but a little bit vague in what he's proposing. This guy is very definite, but we don't really like this aspect. So hopefully we'll get those responses, come back to you after an internal staff evaluation, come back to you, and then you get to decide which one you pick. And as we discussed earlier, you may decide, let's go with this one right now, let's just sell it for cash. This one, let's work with the developer, and let's hold this one off because we didn't really get anything really exciting on this property over here. So we'll see how it plays out.
Thank you, John, and Bernard, I appreciate that. Yeah.
And then to close out our comments, assuming that we get a continued go-ahead from the council today, the next steps would be to finalize the offering document. We're hoping that we can get that out to the public by the end of the month, if not sooner, and do a broad outreach, mailings, phone calls, press releases, notices in the paper, word of mouth, just really broadcast the opportunity as widely as we can so that we get lots of interest. And then to wait and work with any people that are interested, answer questions, give them tours. There may be just a few minor things, nothing expensive, nothing very involved, maybe tidying up some of the furniture and putting it in a corner in the police building or something. But, you know, gussing it up just a little bit, but not spending any money on it. Those would be some of the things we'd be doing over the next while, and then we're hoping to bring you some great proposals in January. So in terms of options for you, one thing you could do is say, great idea, go ahead. Another might be to say, no, we want a little bit more detail in these proposals. We'd like to see some sketches. We'd like to have a firmer request for proposal process. There are a lot of pros to that. You get a lot more information. The con is that it would be somewhat more expensive and involved for a developer to respond. And since we're a relatively untested market, they may not be willing to go to that additional effort, time, and expense. So we're leaning toward casting a wider net. Or you could decide you didn't want to sell the properties right now, wanted to wait for whatever reason, or provide any additional ideas or thoughts you might have for us.
Well, Renata, thank you. So how we've gotten to this point, we did put a number of things in motion. So in terms of consolidating city offices and the library into one building, and then looking at trying to get some development into downtown. That was the whole point of what we were looking at doing, and returning as many of these properties as we can, as quickly as we can, back to the tax rolls. So I think that this is a piece that is important that we do, and we do it right. For me, I look at your options for, first off, the document you provide for us, thank you. Appreciate the outline of what the next steps are so we can follow that and know where we're going. In terms of the council considerations, I'll let everyone have their shot here in a moment. I think with the request for expressions of interest, we are an unproven market to some degree. We are seeing some new businesses come in. We're finally getting a Big Five sporting goods store that's opening up here at the end of the month for those at home. Be on the lookout for that. So those are big things that are coming that I think give us some momentum. There is a certain amount of a blank slate piece that I think we're looking at as well. So I would be surprised, I think, if we started to get these expressions of interest coming in that didn't have sketches or at least ideas loosely penciled out, I would think, to kind of help. The whole intent was, we knew we wanted to do this. What is it? What do the dominoes look like? What are we going to put in? We know what we want to see come in, but what does it look like? That's where I think this, for me, I'd like to see that we, continue with the expressions of interest as proposed. That's my piece of it, but I'll move it and open it up to the council for comments and questions as well.
I agree. I'm on the same page.
Mr. Mayor, I agree too. I think the request for expressions of interest is really creating a vision for what could be, and I think with your work, it really lends itself to the best possible outcome, which I'm very excited about, so I agree. I think that would be the correct path.
Okay. Do we have any other direction for staff at this point that we want them to dive into, stay on track, just keep on keeping on?
This be a reasonable time for a motion.
Need a motion?
There's a motion on page 54.
Well, there you go. There is a motion. Any other, how many more developers do you think are still kind of circling, thinking about?
We're planning to meet with at least 5 or 6 more.
5 or
That's
6
correct.
more?
Right,
How many have you met with so far?
about 10. And we'll also, as Renata said, this is going to be a very wide net we're going to cast. We're probably going to reach out to every architect, in the region, and developer and contractor, you don't want to leave any stone unturned. You never know if someone says, hey, I have a brew pub that's looking for a site somewhere in this area. Let's make sure whoever has a connection to that brew pub knows about this opportunity.
Yes, Councilor.
In your experience, do you see very many of these companies that are developers resist putting forth some kind of a plan or pictures, or do you see very much of that?
We talked about this morning. If you're a developer, you have a choice. If I divulge a lot, the risk I'm taking is there'll be some element of what I'm divulging you're not going to like. But if I don't say anything, we're in the dark. So we don't know, why should we go with you? Because you're not telling us anything. So the way we've drafted the document, it's at a 85% draft now. It gives the city the prerogative of saying, time out, we want more information before we move forward.
Okay.
It sounds like the best plan to give us the most flexibility.
So with that being said, John and Renata, do you have enough from us in terms of the idea of what we're kind of looking for? She's not, okay. She's like,
If we just stay out of their way.
well, then I'm going to get in the way real quick here. Looking at the picture, the City of Canby property is available. I think it's the draft picture there. Is that the most recent aerial shot that we have?
I think we could probably do better.
I would love to be able to see that picture with the First Avenue redevelopment in that picture.
Yeah.
I think that would really
This is a
pronounce a
pretty old
lot.
picture.
I noticed that as well. Maybe CTV5's little helicopter can go out and take a picture.
Yeah, it's pre-development, but post taking the trees out. It's just like, I don't know when this picture was taken, but we could pretty much figure out this isn't painting us in the best light.
That's a good suggestion. We'll work on that.
Thank you.
And with that, I will get out of your way. Counselor Coleman, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move that the city launch the request for expressions of interest process as quickly as possible to market 4 downtown city buildings for sale or redevelopment as proposed.
Excellent.
Need a second?
I do need a second. Thank you. So the motion's been made by Counselor Coleman and seconded by Counselor Rocha to direct city staff to launch the request for expressions of interest process as quickly as possible to market 4 downtown city buildings for sale or redevelopment as proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, that passes 6-0. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, next piece of new business is the vertical housing tax credit incentive, and I think Renata, you are in charge of presenting that as well.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason we're bringing this opportunity before you is that as we were talking to some of the developers, they were saying, what can the city do? What kind of programs do you have in place now? This is an untried market, especially for several layers of housing. And they mentioned the vertical housing tax credit as a powerful tool that's worked well with other communities. They have it in place in Oregon City and Milwaukee and Hillsborough and around the state. So I thought I would bring the information forward to you to consider as a tool. There's a couple of components to it. The ground floor would be retail, and all of that assessed value from that ground floor development, whether it's new development or redevelopment, would be completely on the tax rolls. And then the developer could get up to 80% property tax break for 10 years for each story up to 4 stories. So it's 20% per story. So if the developer built 2 stories, they would get 40% tax break for 10 years on those 2 stories, and so on. The maximum height allowed in downtown Canby would be 60 feet, so there wouldn't be any conflict with a 4-story. The maximum that the vertical housing tax credit works for is 4 stories. And they have a matrix, a calculator that helps the developer and us understand what that means. So if we were to move forward with this, it would provide a fairly strong and effective incentive that's been proven in the region. The program's been around for about 10 years in the state. And it is a short-term opportunity at this moment because the program is set to sunset at the end of 2015. There is rumblings about proponents going to Salem and asking for it to be extended, but at this point we don't know if that would be successful. So there's a limited window if a developer were interested in purchasing one of our buildings and looking at a multi-story residential development. This would be an incentive that would help it pencil. We also looked at what was allowed in the zone in establishing this area, and in talking with our planning director, the only area in Canby that allows mixed-use development is in the downtown core area, the C1 zone, just right here, which encompasses all of the 4 buildings that we actively have on the market. It also extends a little bit north of Waite Park, so it could spur redevelopment around there should someone be interested in that. So if we were to move ahead with this, the process is fairly straightforward. We would prepare a resolution for your review and adoption at your next meeting if you so wish. We also need to send a letter out to our taxing districts. I would probably want to talk one-on-one with some of our larger taxing districts. The fire district would be the main one. The city is actually the largest taxing district between urban renewal and the city and the library, by far the largest. The next is the school district, but the school district isn't affected really financially because they get compensated at the state level on a per-student basis. They're not really compensated by property taxes any longer, and that's complicated, but that's how it is. So the only taxing district, larger taxing district that I want to reach out to is the fire district and see what they had to say. In talking with the expert at the state, a taxing district could choose to opt out, and so that's a flexibility that they would have. So talk to the taxing districts. They get 15 days to respond by letter. The expert on this program said that if we had a complete, thorough application, that they could process it within a month, month and a half at the most. So we could move fairly quickly on this. We could have it in place in the similar time frame that we would be receiving development proposals back. And even if we never get an application, it sends a really strong business-friendly symbol to our development community that Canby really wants to be a good partner. We're willing to put forward incentives to make things pencil, and that we want mixed-use development and more residential in our downtown by providing this incentive.
Okay. Questions? Yes, Councilor Coleman.
And you definitely say that having this in place could push some of these sales and development over the finish line to really get them going, isn't that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a 20% per floor property tax abatement for 10 years. That makes a difference. And maybe you can speak to that, too, about other examples from around the region.
It was one of the main tools we used for the fourth main mixed-use project in downtown Hillsborough, which is 3/1, so they got a 60% abatement. As Renata says, 20% per floor. And the city did, we talked about this earlier, return on investment analysis said even with that tax incentive, the additional revenues, because that building, as is the case here, was on a property that had been publicly owned, the city made money, so to speak, over time. It took a little bit longer to capture that increase because of the partial 10-year abatement. But I think in that case, and I believe it would be the case here, you come out ahead over time. And it's a necessary tool. It was pretty critical to that one developer going forward.
You said a couple of the developers that you've been kind of touring around have asked about this specific aspect as a tool for us. Do you have another question?
I was just going to ask Councilor Parker to point out the value of 2 additional citizens that live in a downtown area that are able to walk.
He's been waiting to share.
Well, this is
Why'd you
return.
call him a bigger softball pitch?
This is return on investment for letting me go to the Main Street Conference. Yeah, the latest research shows that for every 2 people that are in a downtown residence, that it adds $8,000 to the downtown businesses, that people are more inclined to walk and shop within 6 blocks of where they live. And a lot of cities, and we do as well, spend money chasing the tourism dollar, but if we can have our tourists living here, then it helps the American dream, because you're right here where you are, and you can coach your kids Little League and walk and get to know your neighbors. So I think councils in the past have made some good investments and given Renata and her predecessors some tools. This is another tool. And Rick, what I would ask for you to do is to have a yellow pad of things that would be nice to do. I realize that our capacity in planning is small, and compared to the amount of work that is going up is going to get smaller. But Renata mentioned that the area that allows mixed-use development is limited, and I'm sure it's been years since we've taken a look to see whether that's an appropriate area and whether that needs to be adjusted. So perhaps within our big picture of land use discussion over the next year, we can also take a look at whether we have all of the appropriate designations in the downtown and adjacent areas to accommodate for both commercial growth, but also the residential growth that would help spur downtown business.
If I may, one question that I would ask you to pose to the fire chief is his ability to serve as we begin to approach 60-foot heights in buildings. Then we need ladder trucks, we need elevated trucks.
There you go.
Okay.
And according to the building codes, the maximum is 60 feet, and I assume this is 12 feet to a story. And so what, we've got 5 stories, then we could have
I think the first
maximum.
floor actually has to have a higher ceiling
Yeah.
than subsequent floors.
So
So it's a
it's
4-story limit.
4-story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around that in downtown Canby.
And the vertical housing tax credit only applies to 4 stories of residential, not higher. So,
And I'll go back to, we look at the Andrus building as an example of a building that came in and kind of look at it, and it was like, usually not a typical build-out of what we've seen, and we're going to follow that up with what our civic building could potentially look like, and so it's a trend for sure. And I mean,
2 versus 4 would be quite a difference.
absolutely, no, they'll definitely stand
2 is
out,
still
but
little odd.
the taxing districts, it seems to me, I mean, it's a smaller area, so it might not be, it's not a frozen tax base, it's a total, it's off taxing
So-
districts, it would go across all taxing districts.
So 2 things. The taxing districts would get all of the assessed value on the first floor, and 80% of the taxes on the second floor, no, wait, is that right? And then 60% of the taxes on the third floor, like that. So,
It's incrementally going down based
Yeah.
on floors.